So we've identified four key areas where it's really important to focus in on when it comes to youth volunteers and things that we think commonly sometimes get missed. So the first being their communication. Writing things down, especially for younger youth, is going to be extremely important. Both so that you both you're guaranteeing that you're going through the process of getting all the information that you need. Being on the same page about response times is a huge thing as well, in particular. The next thing is doing whatever's convenient. We really recommend that don't try to force yourself into feeling like you have to do something for the sake of professionalism or because it's been done a particular way in the past. Think about what is going to be the easiest way to communicate. Sometimes that's direct messages or texts, or sometimes it's emails, but oftentimes it's not emails. And modeling your open communication, whatever kind of communication you want to be having from the youth is ultimately what you should be modeling first. So you're giving them a model of something to build off of. And oftentimes, this is their opportunity to experience these kinds of environments for the first time. Might be some of the earlier, more professional environments that they're in. And it's a great opportunity to get them started on the right foot. I think we have an example from our Rise Up staff in terms of how they can support on this front in communication.
I know that it's been successful sometimes. Often the first meeting with youth is, maybe a Zoom meeting or a little bit over email, a little bit more formalized. But once that relationship's been established, sometimes switching to text is definitely a way to get easier responses. I know sometimes if I'm waiting a few days for an email from a youth, I'll send a quick text, and that is usually a little bit faster in getting a response. But it's also something that I'm comfortable doing in my own communication too. So kind of acknowledging that it's for me and for the youth. That's kind of a nice adaptation for quick check-ins. It's a good communication thing.
Thank you, Megan. Completely agree. You want to make sure that you're also doing what's going to work best for you and working with whatever existing habits you have. Don't try to create an entirely new system to work off of. The next big point here is motivation. Be honest about what's possible. Some youth are going to be really, really excited. Some might lose steam at certain points. What's most important is connecting what people are doing to the overall goal of the work, like the overall broader organizational vision. Really connecting it to your value system and what you're trying to accomplish is what allows people to stay connected to the sort of less exciting work that they're doing. Being honest about what's possible, setting realistic expectations is really important because we don't want to send people off on chases that aren't going to be ultimately useful for their time, but also it's good to be upfront with people about hey, sometimes the culture and the economy is in such a place that we can't really do the work to a level that we would like to. I mean, you can be honest about how you feel about that as well. It's completely fine to, be upfront about the realities of the context and the environment that you're working within, but also to encourage you to take charge and find ways to, you know, engage in work that is exciting to them, whatever that is, and finding and looking for that work. Sometimes it is just looking at different opportunities for learning. Maybe that's shadowing people in completely different roles. Maybe it's digging through old file systems. There's lots of different ways in which you can support people's growth, and motivation is a really key part of that. And by modeling your curiosity about the youth themselves, you can also get them to sort of start modeling that curiosity back in that same way we talked about through communication, modeling curiosity about, oh, what else can we do here to improve? What's already going on? What other work could be possible here? Is there anything that our Rise Up staff would like to jump in with to add to this point?
Yeah, thanks, Eli. Yeah, just quickly highlighting what us as regional leads can do to help you all with this topic. So we, as regional leads, do have conversations with the youth as they enter the program and through regular check-ins throughout their placement about their goals, their interests, their motivations. And so we're happy to have conversations with you all about how to adapt the placement to better suit their motivations, but also align with the organization's priorities. So co-creation is something that we're really big on, so always happy to have those conversations. Also happy to provide prompts to get to know the youth a little bit better, and also happy to sit in on those initial meetings to help co-create that placement. And then also when it comes to creating the volunteer posting in the first place, we're always happy to provide feedback and review those because we do know what the youth are interested in and patterns that we're seeing, so we can help kind of adapt those placements to reflect what the youth are interested in. So yeah, feel free to reach out when.
Thank you, Vaya. Yeah, those patterns is like such a critical point. The regional leads have so many touch points with the youth and have been through this before. So definitely have a lot of expertise that you can lean on here. The last two we have. So power dynamics is a really interesting thing when we're working with youth in particular. I am we at City Hive we are like a youth-led organization, so we are by youth for youth, and that causes us to be intersecting with lots of different power structures. Oftentimes, we are the youngest people in the room trying to be heard. And there are lots of youth that you're going to be working with that are also kind of in similar positions. This is a really great opportunity to be talking about positionality, whether that is about, like hierarchical structures or gender or age. Be open about your positionality if you are, especially if you have younger people that are supervising younger people as well, being defining what those boundaries are of when someone is an expert and when someone is speaking from like their lived experience. Um, there's as much as possible being clear about who is responsible for making final decisions is really important. But as much as possible, also being able to share in that decision making is such a wonderful thing to be able to get youth to be practicing, and especially youth that might be interested in taking on some leadership opportunities later on, modeling again that good leadership, but also letting them in on that process of some decision making and the like pros and cons and risk management and all of that sort of stuff is like really great opportunities, especially if somebody else is holding that final ball of having to make that call and holding the sort of liability, quote unquote, in that sense. Our Rise Up staff, do you have anything to add around power dynamics?
I think one thing I would add, if I can jump in, Eli, is particularly around like the language that we use when we're talking with youth and recognizing that, this program really attracts youth, from 15 to 30, and that oftentimes comes with different lived experiences, different levels of education and exposure. And so I think one thing that we've learned and one thing that we try to promote in our program is to make sure that language is nice and plain and welcoming and friendly, and that when we're thinking about our own bubble and what we know from our organizations, throwing in acronyms is such a easy response for most of us, but can really, ostracize or make you feel kind of like they're on the outside of the organization. So just being aware of your language when you're speaking with the youth really helps you to meet them at their level. And I think that's something our regional leads try and help with and can facilitate in that first initial meeting, especially when the youth is coming to the placement for the first time. Having the regional lead there as well can kind of be like a nice middle ground person to help with that relationship building. So that's what I would say.
Thank you, Lauren. And to your point about acronyms and explaining things, sometimes you have to explain things multiple times. I have to have acronyms defined for me many times when I am in a new role. And sometimes if you just see a little bit of a confusion in someone's face, they might not be upfront about not knowing what you're talking about. So if you see a little bit of hesitation, always a good idea to just clarify. Um, Lastly is capacity. Capacity is really tough when you're working with volunteers. There is an element of having to manage those people, and also those people are doing some work, and it's a difficult thing to balance, especially with lots of other conflicting priorities. Our advice here is to be as clear as possible about who is responsible for what, so that we're not I'm gonna say bugging people that like have other really high priority work. If that's coming from volunteers that are like really eager to get stuff done, but it's also really important in terms of allowing the youth to empower themselves about like what resources are available to me and what can I do with those resources, and that really helps spread out the workload a little bit better when they have a good understanding of what is available to them in terms of support and tools in the form of people often. Be flexible with the feedback that's coming in. Like when we recommend that you have frequent touch points with the youth, sometimes you'll be surprised. Some people you'll think that they want to take on more and they actually are like, I want to chill out, and vice versa. It is worth talking to people. And also just being clear about, hey, there are slower seasons, there are faster seasons. I might be busier at this time, so responses might be delayed. Being upfront about that kind of stuff just releases so much anxiety that they might have around any sort of uncertainty. You might have heard clarity is kindness. That's the idea here. And lastly, we're just protecting your humanity. Like, ultimately, if you are interested in mentorship or leadership or stewarding this next generation, being in a good state of mind yourself is so important in order to be able to do this work and feel good about it, and to be a good mentor and like a pleasant person to work with and a pleasant person to be throughout this time. And so really just taking care of yourself, and if that means pulling back on things and not taking on as much as much as you thought you could, that is totally okay. And to model that for youth as well is huge. Being upfront about, hey, you know what? Like this has been a rougher period than we thought it was going to be. We can't actually take on as much as we thought. That is such a huge thing to model, and a great opportunity to talk about being upfront and coming up, bringing up issues early or snags before they start to snowball, which is a lesson that I think we all learn repeatedly throughout our lives. I know I'm almost a little over time, but Rise Up staff, is there any last things to add here regarding capacity?
Yeah, Eli, thanks. I would just like to add to that, kind of clarify things up front early on. In that spirit as well, I've in my experience, managing volunteers is always it draws on your capacity, always. But what I found works really well is really investing the time up front to train that person appropriately and empower them to make their own decisions. And so you can build that trust early on rather than having to continually micromanage or even just be a little bit more hands-on through the later end of their placement. It's been really, really beneficial for most of my host orgs who have chosen to really invest in that training early on, and empower the youth to take on a project and be independent. I find that is a really, really big asset for building capacity.
Thanks, Ben. Those are our four main tips here. Hopefully, this is a little bit helpful for you. Communication, motivation, our power dynamics, and capacity. Four things just to think about, and this will be shared with you by our Rise Up staff. And this will also be our topics of our conversations as we're moving forward into the next part of this session. I'm going to hand it back to Lauren.
Awesome. Thanks, Eli. That's so helpful to have a one pager. And I know that a lot of this information is probably things that you live every day. This is your reality, and we hear it on our side too. Absolutely. And can share a lot of the challenges, especially I would say with capacity and how we're showing up for volunteers and managing, I would say, kind of on the spectrum of motivation, youth that show up that are really keen to take on a lot. And if you're already at, a low capacity, being able to give them, the challenges that they're seeking or the opportunities that they're seeking can also be really hard. And so it's kind of a bit of a balance. Others of us are, maybe still looking for youth and are kind of like questioning, well, how do we communicate with youth in the first place and get them interested in coming to our host organization? Like, what does that look like? And that can be, a location thing. It can be a time of year. Seasonal work can be hard. It can also be a little bit easier depending on, the youth schedules and when they're out of school and those sorts of things. So as we know, it's multi-layered and complicated. And so that brings us to the next piece of our afternoon together here. We want to hear from all of you and give you the space to connect with each other and talk through potential scenarios. I know in the registration we had asked just some like very high level questions about some of the challenges that you face. This doesn't necessarily have to be particular to Rise Up. It can be kind of a broader, what are some of the barriers that you're facing, or if you can think about scenarios of hosting other volunteers in your organization in the context of maybe youth, just because that's what we're here for. But yeah, I would encourage you all to kind of think about a situation or something that's a big barrier to you. And really the next 10-15 minutes is an opportunity for you to connect with other organizations across the province to kind of chat through maybe similar things. If there's like creative or innovative ways that you've navigated capacity or motivation that you'd want to share, and or just voice your kind of frustrations with the challenges. That's what we're here for. So we'll have two facilitators in each breakout room. We've designed the breakout rooms to kind of be themes that Eli just covered. So those four themes of communication, motivation, power dynamics, and capacity. So feel free to choose one, but that doesn't necessarily limit the theme that you can talk about in the breakout room. So if it, organically just like snowballs into something else, that's okay too. too. This is just to kind of get us initially grouped up into breakout rooms. So we'll have about 15 minutes. I'll open them in a moment, and you'll all have the opportunity to navigate to whatever room resonates with you. And then we'll kind of go from there. We'll do a bit of a report back at the end with our staff that are going to be in each room. And then we'll host a little bit of a question and answer period at the end. And then we'll go from there. And again, it's hard. I know that there's a lot here to unpack, and we could spend a whole afternoon together kind of chatting through each of these themes. But this is really just an opportunity for you all to connect with one another and kind of have those initial conversations, network a little bit too while you're at it. And then yeah, we'll come back together as a bigger group at the end. So with that, I'm just going to open the rooms here. So if you're unfamiliar with breakout rooms, essentially there'll be a little screen that pops up for you and allows you to kind of choose the room to navigate to, and you can just select the name of the group. And feel free to hop on over there as soon as you'd like. Regional leads, feel free to navigate to the room that you were assigned, and we'll see you all in about 15 minutes. I'll bring you back to the room. Wonderful. Okay. Well, yes, I hope your discussions were fruitful in your breakout rooms. I know in ours it certainly was. So maybe what we'll do is I know that each of the staff in the rooms were assigned to take notes and just chat through some high level, like, what did we hear? What did we discuss? So perhaps we'll start there. And then if anybody that was in the room as a host org wants to add anything, if it's a question or another kind of thought, we can do that for the next 10 minutes or so, and then we'll close really quickly. So room number 1 was communication, and that was Ben and Joe from our team. So do you guys have some notes that you want to share?
Yeah, I was the note taker, so I will share some of what we talked about. We had a lovely little small group, so we got some good conversation going. But yeah, we talked a lot about how communication kind of happens throughout the entire process. So in Paul's case, they've had people sign up to volunteer but aren't necessarily actually showing up. And so how do you encourage that, help facilitate the communication as you continue on with the volunteers and things like that? Definitely talked a little bit at the end there about how communication between generations can be a little difficult, maybe having to pivot how you've held meetings or how your decision-making process goes, and being able to understand and consider that when you are working with someone who is younger, that they are coming from where they are, and you can appreciate that and kind of meet them where they're at, which I think Gurjeet said isn't a talent, but I think it is. I think sometimes it's not always the easiest. And so I think it's quite a great skill to have and to have built. We started talking about how Zoom was for people and meeting virtually, and found that, we've all kind of had prior experience with it, and it filled a really good void for organizations during COVID, but we all prefer the face-to-face. We find that gives us much more fruitful conversation and results.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks, Joe. Those are some great. Oh, yep. Sorry, Ben. Go ahead.
I just wanted to highlight something that was interesting from Paul, and that is the having quite a large set of different projects going on. And this kind of speaks to some of the other categories we're talking about, capacity and power, that a lot of the work is done by delegation. Hey, do you want to take leadership on this? Okay, great. Then you go out and recruit and communicate with the volunteers that want to be on that project. And so there's a real delegation of coordination and communication. It's an inspiring model. I really appreciate hearing about it, Paul.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben and Joe, for bringing out your highlights from your group. Gurjeet and Paul were in your group. Gurjeet or Paul, do you want to add anything to the discussion, or if any kind of other questions arose from your discussion?
I think we covered it well. I mean, in the time frame we've got, right? It's we're in a unique situation and have a lot of volunteers, and Megan's very familiar with us, and it's always good to have more discussion and more in-depth discussion as things go on. So I appreciate your opportunity to giving us this opportunity here today. So yeah, right on.
Thanks, Paul. That's awesome. Gurjeet, I see you're off your microphone. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I'm okay with it because I joined late, so I really didn't get into the tradition. But I'm okay. Yeah, I don't. I'm so far. Yeah,
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay, moving on to room two here, motivation. We had Pyle and Tegan from our team. Do you ladies have some notes you want to share?
Yeah, for sure. It was a great conversation. We had Fernanda and Rita. So yeah, we talked about motivation kind of. So we sort of had a few like tips that they're both thinking that is helpful to kind of have motivation. They wouldn't, I feel like they're not struggling with motivation. Their youth are eager and they're ready to go. And really it's having the capacity to have the shifts available and like the, I guess, appropriate supervisors available is something that we talked to towards the end, but I can talk to that. So I guess, yeah, some tips were that Kyle had a good point about leadership. So we have cohort one and cohort two. So if youth are coming from cohort one, that they could actually provide a bit of like a handover to any cohort two youth that are coming through to the same organization, takes capacity off host orgs, and then yeah, provides that sort of leadership initiative opportunity for youth. And then Fernanda brought up a good point that anything sort of like public facing, so if they're doing like, or was this Vita, that any food distribution or work that they're actually able to come out and interact, they see youth sort of like come alive and that they've got now this opportunity to practice their social skills, their communication skills. So even if sometimes yeah, maybe they're just like packing food boxes. But if there is an opportunity, maybe not every week, but to actually come out and see who they're kind of helping, yeah, obviously that increases their motivation a lot. Yeah, of course, we talked about seeing the impact, sort of how they're involved in the wider mission. So Fernanda actually has a resource that she will provide with each volunteer to kind of let them know like this is how volunteers fit in to their wider mission. And I was interested in her sharing that if she would be able to. Maybe not right now, but perhaps like a follow-up. Yeah. Anything else, peeps?
I think that was good. Thanks, T.
And oh yeah, so our last kind of little was from yeah, a request from a parent that they actually have like a female supervisor with her daughter. And I've had that same sort of scenario and was lucky enough that the parent caregiver actually could come into some shifts instead of me having to go to every shift. And yeah, if you're in that circumstance and there is a parent or caregiver or guardian that is available, it's a really cool outcome that for in my circumstance worked really well. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Tegan, and room two. Those are some great points around motivation. And again, like it's a spectrum, right? We have some youth that are keeners and are looking for more and more challenges, and then those that and kind of linked to communication that aren't showing up for shifts and are harder to get a hold of. So it really is. And I know every organization here has had a different kind of experience with that. So I think it's important to say that for sure. So thank you. Okay, just taking a look at the time here. We've got about 4 minutes. If you have to jet because you've got work to do, absolutely go for it. I do want to make sure we give space for everybody, so we may go a couple minutes over just so everyone knows. Okay, moving on to room three. That was the room that myself and Maylin were in. That was Power Dynamics. We had Angie, Fred, and Kaylee with us as well. Maylin, did you take notes and do you want to share them?
Yeah.
Thank you.
In our room about power dynamics, we chatted about having being friends with someone and stepping into a manager role, how to navigate those changing relationships. And Lauren shared a really great tip about continue being yourself and setting boundaries. Honesty is best when navigating these new dynamics and acknowledging maybe some of those changing relationships and allowing a professional relationship to develop. Fred also shared a really great anecdote about when meeting new volunteers, asking them to introduce themselves by sharing who your grandma and grandpa are. It shows a lot about where you come from, maybe your ancestral homelands and cultural knowledge, and also in sharing about yourself in the process, being someone that the youth can feel comfortable and safe talking to. We chatted about how there's just so much to learn from young people, kind of stepping away from that mentality that I know more because I'm older, but acknowledging that there's a lot of inter and intra-generational learning that can happen. Acknowledging that youth know a lot about and are in tune with technology, they're going to use it. So use it to your benefit or their benefit. Acknowledge the tools that are available online, like YouTube. And what else? Is there anything else from my team or my group that folks wanted to chime in on?
I just wanted to say, because I was having such a little giggle at this. It's such a simple thing that you shared, Fred, but I think is so powerful to recognize. I think oftentimes well, I know myself, I can only speak on myself and my own experiences, but I'm often like, oh, youth these days are so on social media all the time and they use their phones like crazy. But like we also would have if we grew up with technology,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it really is that we're just a product of our environment and our social standards and what's around us, right? And we all just want to fit in. And so I think that plays well into, well, how can we use technology as a tool and also set good boundaries when we're hosting youth to make sure that we're not just scolding them for using technology, but also then like exhibiting those behaviors ourselves. So putting our phones away when we're at work, if that's possible, and really like walking the walk and talking the talk ourselves, right? Instead of just providing criticisms and feedback in that way. So I think that's a really good thing to keep in mind that I know for myself too is powerful.
How about
Wonderful. Okay.
for capacity?
Yeah.
I got a couple quick tips just at the
Go
end
for
here.
it.
For us, we talked about sometimes it's really tough if you need like a bunch of volunteers, like you've got a bunch of open spots. Sometimes it feels like you want to be super flexible and have let people self-select in terms of what's going to work best for them, but oftentimes, sometimes a little bit of restriction, actually, a little bit of structure is actually a bit more useful, so that people don't have to do that like mental labor of like, I don't know, does this work for my schedule? It can just be like, I'm signing up for the Monday shift at whatever. Also pairing people together, having people not necessarily coming in for individual shifts, but sometimes for like work parties all together can be really useful. A lot of people volunteer because they like the community aspect of it, and also that allows them to do a bit of their own like self-management and distribute their own like tasks and responsibilities a little bit, which can take some of the capacity load off of you. And then the last thing that we can mention is putting institutional knowledge down on paper in documents as a way of helping with your transitions and your onboarding when you have slower seasons out of the year and you have more senior people that have a bunch of knowledge that could be dumped down somewhere. Just having a record of that can be hugely helpful in terms of reducing capacity later on. It is worth the investment.
Amazing. Thanks, Eli. Those are some good points. And I can imagine it was a hearty discussion in capacity because I know that's one that we're all fighting all the time. So yeah, appreciate you summarizing those pieces for sure. Well, that is the end of our hour already. So yeah, definitely flew by, and I think there's a lot to discuss here. So really appreciate you all making this space over your lunch hour to join us. We're more than happy if you have some feedback for us and want more of this. We're more than happy to organize something. So I've just put together a short survey. I know, another survey, just to get your questions documented somewhere. So if you do have any lingering questions and or would like another, maybe like a part 2 session of this or a deeper dive, or are hungry for some other resources, let us know in there, and then we will know better how we can show up in a meaningful way for you all. So I think Megan has the link and can put it in the chat. Megan, if you don't mind, that would be great. Again, super quick survey, just a space to capture everything there. Thank you to the City Hive team for putting together that one pager. I'll share that out afterwards with the recording as well, so you can go back and check that out. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you for all the work that you've done to either host or show up in the Rise Up program. We're so grateful for you all. And I know that it's a busy season right now, so appreciate that you're taking time to really show up for the youth as well. And just know we're always here. So if you have more questions, we're happy to help answer. Our regional lead team is amazing. So yeah, thank you all. I hope you have a great rest of your day and a good start to the growing season wherever you are. And we'll chat with you soon and keep in touch.